Back in 2007, the Insider visited the Titanic Quarter as it was about to be redeveloped, and there were high hopes for potential employment.
The shipyard would have employed approximately 30,000 people, not only within East Belfast, within Belfast, Greater Belfast and the region. Ultimately, Titanic Quarter, we would like to think, would potentially engage up to 20 to 30,000 new jobs within that location of varying types.
But would this new development on their doorstep benefit the people of East Belfast?
Titanic Quarter is such a scale and size of project that, it's obviously on the fringes of East Belfast. It's very much in the city centre, so it's something that will provide opportunity for all of the city and possibly beyond.
We need to ensure that people are in a position to avail of those jobs and willing to avail of those jobs.
Still a wasteland in 2007, some in the community questioned whether the plans were well drawn.
I really do not think that they realise the potential that they are sitting on here.
This year, the Insider returned to discover if the wasteland had in fact become a wonderland. Much has been written and spoken about Belfast's Titanic Quarter in recent months, and with planning permission now granted for Phase 2 of the development, a 16.5 hectare site adjoining the Titanic and Olympic slipways, construction of some 2,000 new dwellings, together with leisure and office developments, will soon be underway. So is the Titanic Quarter set to be a Queen's Island paradise for the well-heeled, or a much-needed lifeboat for economically shipwrecked East Belfast?
Well, Michael, it's a wasteland now, but there's big plans for this area.
Absolutely, and we had Arlene Foster, the planning minister, down here announcing confirmation of the granting of outline planning permission for Phase 2 of Titanic Quarter, which covers the 40 acres basically we're standing on here, with the Olympic and Titanic slipways in the background, the drawing offices and the old Harlanwood headquarters building behind us, and where we're actually standing now hopefully will be the site of the Titanic Signature project, which is really the centrepiece of the Phase 2, right at the head of the slipways. And that'll be an international Titanic visitor attraction, telling the sort of industrial heritage story of Belfast, of which obviously Titanic's a big part of that, and somewhere for people from far and near to come and enjoy. The rest of the development, which stretches to about 3.25 million square feet, will be made up of 2,000 residential units, and the rest will be made up of workspace, bars, restaurants, shopping to support the local area.
Minister, what particular benefits do you think this new development will bring to East Belfast?
I think it's hugely exciting for East Belfast to have such a major development in their own area. Obviously, the shipbuilding industry isn't what it once was, and that was obviously once where most people found employment. I believe there is still opportunities for employment in what will be the Titanic Quarter, but as well as that, it'll bring a lot of confidence, I believe, to the area of East Belfast, and hopefully the people of East Belfast will feel very much a part of what's going on in Titanic Quarter. And I know it's separated by the Sydenham dual carriageway, if you like, but I still think going over from D Street and what have you, that you will have that link, and I very much hope that and I would encourage the people of East Belfast to get involved in the Titanic Quarter development.
What about the housing in there? At the moment, it just appears to be apartment developments which aren't suitable for families.
And certainly that's one of the things that people say to me about apartment living, that they aren't suitable for family, and I would agree with that. But as I understand it, the developers, although they haven't decided on the final percentage of the social housing that's going to go into there, I think they're looking in and around 15% of the housing accommodation will have social housing. I think that's encouraging. It's actually the maximum limit that is envisaged in the Belfast Metropolitan Area Plan as well. So it is encouraging that they are looking at social housing. I think it's also a reflection of the need to be inside the community and have the community living in the Titanic Quarter, which I think is very, very important.
Obviously, you'd be aware that the European norm is 20% for any development of this scale. I mean, are you happy that only 12.5 to 15% is going to be social housing?
It's really maybe not our decision to, say what the percentage, because I mean, at the end of the day, the responsibility for providing sociable housing is with government and the agencies within government. Certainly, I think in the Belfast Metropolitan Area Plan, it's an issue in terms of what percentages that will be make up parts of development will be set out for the period of the Metropolitan Area Plan over the next 10 years or so.
Graham, for people who aren't aware, what is it that the Belfast Harbour Commissioners actually do?
Belfast Harbour Commissioners, we're a long established organisation. We're responsible for approximately 2,000 acres of land in and around the Antrim and County Down sides of the Port of Belfast, and we're basically responsible for all shipping in and out of that port, and as a consequence we're a major economic driver for the overall region.
In terms of the new development, the new Titanic Quarter development, is it not a major sort of change in direction from running a port to developing a new part of Belfast city centre?
Well, Belfast Harbour Commissioners have historically always had an estate element to their property, that which supports the prime activity of goods in and out of the port. So there are logistics warehouses, etc., supporting port activity. And we have extended that over the most recent years, primarily the last 10 years, which covers areas like Sydenham Business Park and Clarendon, indeed, in which we're standing today.
What about employment down here for the people of East Belfast? I mean, obviously 20,000 people from East Belfast used to work where we're standing. Will those people be looked after? Will East Belfast be looked after when it comes to jobs in this area?
Well, I mean, I think Titanic Quarter is such a scale and size of project that, it's obviously on the fringes of East Belfast. It's very much in the city centre, so it's something that will provide opportunity for all of the city and possibly beyond. Part of the trick, I think, is making sure that the links, both physical and in terms of transport, make the area accessible for people to come to work. Now, already there's somewhere in the region of 1,000 people employed in the Science Park, which is just down at the northern end of Titanic Quarter. But certainly the opportunities are here. Currently, I think 70% of those employed in the construction of the project on phase 1 are local labour. The mechanical contractors are based within the harbour estate, as are the electrical contractors. So, the opportunities are there. I think part of the trick, and it's something we are keen to develop with the statutory agencies and others, is where people are keen to get into employment and maybe don't have the right skills, is facilitating some way of bridge to employment skills being able to be brought to people. And with the Belfast College coming here and opening within the next 2 years, I think early part of 2010, the opportunities are there for helping some of that. The Old Paint Hall being used as a film studio now, I think provides a very good opportunity. You've got a whole range of skills there, from what we might term traditional skills, from seamstress, construction. I mean, there've been, I think, somewhere in the region 250 construction people working within that set of creating some form of bridge to employment opportunities there, which cover all the traditional right the way through to maybe some more high-tech opportunities.
So hopefully in the not too distant future we'll see people from East Belfast being employed in considerable numbers here again?
Well, I wouldn't know where people come from necessarily here at the moment, but I'm sure there are people from East Belfast working here already. I think another trick for the future is trying to stimulate young minds. I think there's huge opportunities here, building on the movie potential, building off the opportunities that the Science Park bring, of creating a whole creative media sector down here.
The shipyard would have employed approximately 30,000 people, not only within East Belfast, within Belfast, Greater Belfast and the region. Ultimately, Titanic Quarter, we would like to think, would potentially engage up to 20 to 30,000 new jobs within that location of varying types. The new assembly has created political stability and once more Belfast is a key location on foreign direct investors' maps, and we hope to leverage off that with all the Assembly's influence and input to create further employment in that region.
When you look at around you here and look at what's left of the shipyard, I mean, do you personally regret that so much stuff is being demolished, that there wasn't enough bricks and mortar history kept?
Well, I think we've still got a very sizable amount of physical heritage asset. You have the Hamilton Dock starting at the top of the road. You've got the headquarters building here with the two drawing offices. We have just refurbished the southern wing of the headquarters building and moved in there. And plans to get underway with the rest of it are sort of been sorted out at the moment. Moving down here, we have the slipways and the area around them, the Alexander Dock, the Thompson Dock pump house, and the Thompson Dock itself. So, you can't keep everything, but I think we have in Belfast the remnants of a very strong attraction to bring people here to learn about Titanic.
Since the shipyard sank without trace, East Belfast has been drowning in dereliction and unemployment. Can the Titanic Quarter throw that community a lifeline?
Michael, how do you think East Belfast will benefit from the Titanic Quarter development?
Well, there's a difference between asking how East Belfast will benefit and how the people of East Belfast will benefit. This development will either be Ballymacarrat or East Belfast, if you prefer, restating its commercial muscle, for want of a better word, which is a matter of history. This was the industrial powerhouse for most of the city, what became the city of Belfast. It's important that it's seen as part of East Belfast primarily, and an adjunct to the city centre as a secondary consideration. It will produce a vast number of jobs during the construction period. We need to ensure that people are in a position to avail of those jobs and willing to avail of those jobs. There will then be a whole raft of other employment possibilities when the development is complete, and it's equally important to ensure that there are other people prepared, willing and trained to take up those opportunities. The other aspect of it is that developments like this tend to be acquired by developers and investors, and it's important that some sort of control is put on the total number of properties that any one investor can actually purchase. It's okay building houses. If we are to have long-term stability, we need to turn those houses into homes and to turn those homes into a society. Belfast originally was a collection of a number of villages, and when people came to settle here, they brought the kinship of the village with them. That is something which has been destroyed by redevelopment, and I feel personally that it is something which we should not have been so readily willing to sacrifice.
Do you think it's acceptable that as little as 12.5% of the housing planned for the development is going to be social housing?
In a word, no. There are two aspects to this. The need for social housing in the city of Belfast, particularly in East Belfast, is real and apparent. The Housing Executive of this year identified the need to build 2,500 houses. They have planned to build 1,500 houses and put in place the finance to build somewhere between 700 and 800 houses.
Well, I think it's a very low percentage, particularly on such a large site, and I think there are huge opportunities there to do something which is completely different. It's not just, though, about the percentages, it's also about how that social housing is constructed within the site. What I want to see is not social housing left to the last plot at the last minute and then all put in one place. I want to see social and affordable housing distributed fairly throughout all of the development so that people are living in properly integrated communities rather than basically being ghettoed off into one section which is deemed different from the rest. I want to see people living side by side as neighbours. I don't mind what religion they are, I don't mind what colour they are. Those things shouldn't be the issue. The issue is about integrating housing so that people can afford to live in a sustainable community. I think that that's good for the developer, I think that it's good for the community, and I think it provides some kind of coherence. I think the other thing that we need to do is look at ways of actually encouraging people who maybe are quite distant from work at the moment. They've maybe been unemployed unemployed for a long time, they're lacking confidence, they lack the skills. Actually getting those people closer to the work situation, giving them some skills and encouragement, making them familiar with what's going to be happening on Titanic Quarter so that they can go in with confidence and compete for those jobs. And that's something that I think worked very effectively around the gasworks site, where they had the GEM scheme and they actually increased employability amongst the local population so that they could benefit directly. And I think it's a scheme like that we need. I mean, I'm conscious very much as a former civil engineer of the demand that there is out there for people at technician level, people at craft level, who can actually get into these projects and deliver them. And that's not just a skill that lasts for the length of time that Titanic Quarter is being constructed. That's a skill that people walk away with at the end of that project that they can then use on other regeneration sites and in other industries. So I think that there's a lot of skilling up needs to be done so that people in East Belfast can compete with everyone else on a level playing field and actually have an opportunity to benefit directly from job creation. There will be huge job creation opportunities when the site is finished, but even in that construction phase, we're talking maybe 25 years of construction. I mean, there's a lifetime's employment for young people who actually have the skills to avail of that opportunity.
Are the facilities available here in East Belfast to educate the community?
At the moment, no, but there's no point in training people for opportunities that aren't there. But there's a great necessity when you know that opportunities are going to come to put the steps in the process in motion and take the steps to ensure that people will be in a position to avail of these opportunities when they come. Training got a very bad name for years because the training became an end in itself. And although you did training courses, there wasn't a job for you at the end of them, and then you did another training course. This is slightly different. This is one of the largest capital value builds in Western Europe, indeed in the whole European Union, and there will be real opportunities for people at the conclusion of it. It's important that people A, know that, and B, are assisted in taking advantage of this when it's finished.
The more and more I see of our city fathers and developers and the powers that be in this town, the more and more saddened I become, because I really do not think that they realise the potential that they are sitting on here. I mean, when you look around you, we are sitting here on the biggest tourist attraction in the world, bar none. We have the potential here for something that would make Disneyland and Universal Studios look like Barry's Amusements. Not to knock Barry's Amusements, but you know what I mean. But we're limited here by our vision. We're limited here because we have this word in our vocabulary here that we use all the time. Would you like a wee bag? Would you like a wee leaflet? Would you wait a wee moment? Would you take a wee chair? Coupled with the it'll do attitude, which is a recipe for disaster. Whereas we have here, if people could only see it, what is wrong with building a replica of the ship? James Cameron could do it for a movie. Surely here in Belfast, where it was built originally, in the yard that it was built in, we still have the drawings, we still have the plans, we still have one or two of the craftsmen still about. That ship should be sitting there as a working hotel, complete with the menus of the day, the band playing the music of the day. We could employ people to dress as the waiters and waitresses in the costumes of the day. We could have a full working replica of that ship. And I guarantee you that it would be the biggest tourist attraction in the world. It is a license to print money. We're sitting here on a potential gold mine and we don't see it. And what are we going to put up? We're going to put up a little string of lights in the shape of a ship. Things like that, you know, build a hotel out of bricks in the shape of a ship. It's all small time. It's all small vision. We've got to see the big picture.
In 2014, the original Harland and Wolff drawing office is dwarfed by the Titanic signature building. Of a similar stature to the original White Star vessel, the building forms a tourism and conference centrepiece in an area which is rejuvenated and slowly coming back to life. Well, Michael, obviously there have been considerable changes since we were last here. Just talk us through what's actually been delivered so far.
We've now about 4,500 people working in the area, about 1,000 living, and somewhere in the region of 15,000 full and part-time students learning and having education in the area, and close to 1 million visitors coming to the area. So going from no buildings to now about just over 1.3 million square feet has been put here, bringing in somewhere in a range of investment of close to £350 million worth.
The last time we were down around this area was 7 years ago, and we were wandering about looking at the state of the area, talking about the proposed future development with regards to social housing and other historical buildings relating to the area that would be put in place to attract more tourists. And coming back today after the 7 years and looking around, we can see that what we have got since that time is the iconic Titanic building. Not to everyone's taste, but if we look around the general area we were before, we can see there's very, very little, if anything, that has been put in place. We have the layout of what was the Titanic. Last time we were here, I think, was a little plaque, but all they seem to have done is to fill in the slipway with concrete and mark out white lines where the ship used to be. Nothing really still here to do with the ship, apart from the pneumatic. As regards the drawing office, which is across the road from us, nothing seems to have been done with that. It still seems to be sitting derelict. The rest of the area is just the same depressing wasteland. I just find it terribly sad that this isn't being utilised to its full potential. There is so much could be done here, especially in relation to the actual Titanic.
Looking at the scene around me, it could be any city, anywhere, possibly in the world, but anywhere in Europe. It has certain aspects that remind us of the once industrial greatness of this region, the Titanic Signature project, the pneumatic behind us. The difficulty is the way in which it's been integrated into East Belfast as such. It is in East Belfast. It was brought forward as a great advance for East Belfast, but to many people it feels like the city centre impinging into East Belfast. The important thing at the time, I thought, was to ensure that local people would be trained to take up good quality jobs, both in the construction and long term, that there would be some degree of social housing that would integrate Belfast in a way in which it used to be housing close to places of employment, and that it would not become a Klondike for speculative development. And I think if I could find the list that I gave at the time, that every single one of those criteria has been sought for and missed. And that's not being harsh. This is still in its early stages of development. It was interrupted by the necessity for the general public, who have very little, to bail out the banking system, which had quite a lot, and then lost it in the way in which the bookmakers would, to be quite frank. Whilst I welcome the progress that has been made, for most people in East Belfast, even visiting one of these attractions is probably beyond their financial wherewithal.
It's difficult to say what a tourist experience would actually be like, because it's hard to put yourself into the position of, you know, coming when you come from here, you're seeing it in a completely different light. I've been into the Titanic building. I've been around the exhibition. Yeah, I could see how tourists might think it's good, and you know, it's interesting, and it gives you an idea. But it's like a used to be and wannabe exhibition, when a reproduction of what was actually here not that long ago, and it's still here in some respects. And you wonder why they make a reproduction of it instead of utilising what is actually here, which would give people a better idea of what went on in this yard, once the biggest shipyard in the world, turning out massive ships. But it's hard to know. It's hard to know what the powers that be are thinking and what they intend to do with this place. But the modern Belfast that was promised to us long ago, when the whole project was put into operation, just does not seem to be coming into fruition.
Comfortable riverside living has been achieved by some, but in terms of the community, has the promised social housing element been delivered?
Unless the people who are living in social housing have taken to driving Porsches, Jaguars and a whole variety of other sports cars, I somewhat suspect that there are not many socially occupied properties in the very nice block behind me. There probably never was going to be, but it was an opportunity that was lost because the provision of and the allocation of housing, whether it goes to nationalists or unionists, doesn't interest me. Housing should be viewed as a need, and the need should be satisfied.
In the absence of housing and significant social housing, it'll always have the sense of the corporate, not of the community. So we need to bring the people together who are going to say, yeah, it's going to be a big corporate development because it'll bring jobs, tourist numbers and so on. But we also need to get a real firm grip on where the public interest in these lands lies. That's why I'm very concerned, have been for a long time, that the Harbour Commission, the Odyssey Trust and the Titanic Quarter think that this is theirs to develop as they see fit. It is not. The harbour lands and estate is part of the property of the people of Belfast, and those who have control of these lands need to get that understood.
I think at this stage we had hoped there had been a lot more residential here, but the world changed. Things I think are beginning to change for the better again in terms of the economy, basically globally. Our affordable housing, which includes the social housing, is contained within our planning conditions. The first phase of residential doesn't contain that, but the remainder of the residential, which will be delivered, I think it's 15% of that has to be affordable housing, which covers the full spectrum of affordable housing, including social housing.
What obviously I would want to see is, as the site progresses, that we see that social and affordable housing integrated into each of the developments. What we don't want to see is any kind of ghetto community created where social housing is put separately to other housing, or where people feel that they're not being integrated into the rest of society. What we want are developments that seamlessly include social and affordable housing. People who live in social and affordable housing are exactly the same as everyone else. They have the same aspirations, they have the same housing need, and what we need to do is find ways of integrating communities better so that we have proper communities that actually function and work. The best cities work that way, and that's what we need to create in this space. And I think as we actually see the housing market pick up again, there will be real opportunities to deal with the housing need that exists in East Belfast, but to do it in a constructive way here and in a very integrated setting. Not just integrated in terms of social and affordable housing, but integrated too in terms of our wider issues around sectarianism and racism in the city, and actually create communities that are sustainable and inclusive communities, dynamic communities that will change over time, but communities that will actually last and benefit the people who live as part of them. We're standing right beside the dock, cafe and church. That's something that they have been doing. They have been building a community here from the ground up, and it's just stunning when you talk to Chris and hear that from going from about 300 customers a week in their first year, they're now dealing with 300 customers a day. I mean, they had more people in August just in one day than they had in the first August they were open. I mean, that's a huge amount of progress, but that's about turning this into a really lived space where it's about people and not just buildings and construction. And that to me is the real transition that needs to happen for this to be a successful part of the city.
Well, Chris, a lot of people in Northern Ireland think the Titanic Quarter is mainly a tourist area, but in fact there's a thriving community down here. Just tell us a bit about the community here.
Absolutely. Actually, there are people who live here now. There's a massive big college. There's loads of students. There's people who work down here. I think we're starting to get into the days where people say Titanic Quarter is home. That's how this cafe actually started. We used to meet out on deck chairs out in the open square there, just because the people moving into the apartments didn't have a kind of place to meet their neighbours yet. And so we used to run little coffee mornings on deck chairs, and then that became this little pop-up cafe. And all the life that you see today, all the customers who come in here, the book groups and the toddler groups and the knitting groups and all the rest of it, that's all sprung from that desire for people who are living here or working here to actually get to know their neighbours and feel like they're part of the place. There's no one particular type of person who lives here. You get people who work in Citibank who've got apartments just across the road. You've got people from all across the world. You've got Game of Thrones cast and crew sometimes take apartments up above us. You sometimes just have people who live or work in Belfast and just fancy the idea of apartment living, looking out on the water, on the Lagan and on the site where the Titanic was built, starting to live here, raise families here. It's a complete mixture.
While nothing remains of Titanic and her siblings Olympic and Britannic, the White Star tender vessel Nomadic is restored and open to the public.
This ship was restored and brought back to Belfast, where it was originally built back in 1911 as a tender to Titanic. It is a secret little gem in the middle of the Titanic Quarter, and quite a lot of footfall has came through since we've reopened to the public. We offer a guided tour which lasts for about an hour on the ship, and then afterwards visitors can spend as long as they like exploring different areas of the ship itself. On board they can dress up as first and second class passengers, try on crew outfits. They can feel the original rivets that Harland and Wolff originally put in, and that really draws people to this area just to see how the craftsmen and engineers of Belfast put together this little tender.
In terms of wider community stuff, across the road we have T13, which is a sort of not-for-profit charity that basically encourages people into urban extreme sports, from BMX to skateboarding to theatre to street art. So that's I think drawn in about 400,000 people into a sort of semi-derelict shed that's the other side of the Queen's Road here. But plans have been worked up with them to put a business case together for a purpose-built urban academy which covers the full sort of range of culture. It would be the island of Ireland's largest shared cultural space. It's about 80,000 square feet. So, it's constantly flexing and changing all sorts of novel new ideas. A lot of youth outreach programs and apprenticeship schemes that they're involved in that.
What about the sort of signature Titanic things like the drawing office? What's happening with that?
That sort of train has now left the station in terms of the working up the whole paraphernalia for that. The building is currently leased to the Titanic Foundation that basically owns Titanic Belfast. They have applied and successfully obtained lottery funding, which will pay for the restoration of the drawing offices and the key historic rooms. Together with a building premises renovation allowance and normal financing, will make the scheme viable. It'll be turned into an 83-bed boutique-style Titanic-themed hotel. The drawing offices and the historic bits of the ground floor will have good public access, which is a key criteria for the lottery funding. So we're hopeful that may be delivered in 2016.
As well as the Titanic Quarter development, work is now underway on the Belfast Harbour Commissioner's City Quays site on the opposite bank of the Lagan.
It's ex-shipping land, which has been transformed into a mixed-use regeneration scheme, primarily office-led, and we actually have the first office building currently under construction for delivery early 15.
We've just got the planning permission through for the next phase of the film studios as part of a wider creative campus. And certainly we believe there's a strong demand out there that we'll be able to fill those buildings when we build them, and the economic impact on that particular industry right across the community is vast, from basic wardrobe and seamstress and makeup and hairdressing through to the building skills, plastering, joinery, and then the local community in terms of cafes, bars, restaurants, hotels, all see a benefit from that activity, taxis. So there's a huge opportunity, and you can see the likes of BMC, Queen's University and University of Ulster now putting more money into courses that are linked into providing the skill sets for that industry going forward.
There are lots of young people from East Belfast, young people I know personally from inner East Belfast, who are studying at Belfast Met. Young girls who, for example, have decided to do health and beauty and are now working in salons because of the training that they've had there in those facilities, which are absolutely amazing facilities just across the way. So there are opportunities then for those young women to look to the future and say, well, maybe I want to start my own business, open my own salon, and have that kind of opportunity to grow my own business, create a sustainable opportunity. So there are all sorts of chances here. We also want to be able to tap people into things that are happening in the Belfast Science Park, the kind of incubation sites that we have there for people who have got innovative science-based ideas and who just need that extra bit of support. I deal regularly with people who come to me with business ideas from East Belfast. We can refer them and get them help with those ideas so that they can develop new jobs, new businesses and new skills. And that's a very positive thing. That's a much more sustainable model than simply creating large projects that when they finish then people are left bereft and with nowhere to turn. Actually creating that ingenuity in people and allowing them to build their own skills and allowing them to build their own businesses is a more sustainable model going forward, and I think it's one that seems to be working for some people. We need also to focus on those people though who are very far from employment, and there is an issue with a lot of young people in East Belfast who are very disaffected, who are often second and third generation unemployed and who find the whole concept of work, how to access employment and all of the things that go with it, even accessing education, a struggle. We need to find ways of connecting them, not just physically with this site, but actually bringing them into the site and making them feel part of it.
One of the other things that we have sort of thrown out there that we would like to see, and again it's a demonstration of a city on the rise. You can look at Belfast, we haven't had a proper new bridge in the city for decades. You go to other cities like Dublin where you see new bridges sort of happening nearly all the time. We have sort of started to float the idea that there should be a new bridge basically if you continue along the front of Titanic Belfast across the other side of the water, which will take you out more or less close to where the York Gate station is currently. So it opens up access for the north of the city to get here both ways, hugely more accessible, and again makes a statement for the city. The Belfast rapid transit system that was postponed for a couple of years is now back on track again, so I think it's due to be delivered by the end of next year or 2016. The actual stops are already provisioned. You can see the way the curb rises on the other side of the road. That's sort of pre-designed in to cater for those when they did arrive, so hopefully we'll see that within the next, in less than 2 years.
I think we also need to deal with the barriers that exist in people's minds and not just the physical barriers. If people feel that they don't belong somewhere, no amount of building new streets and roads will actually make them feel any more connected. So we need to find ways of dealing with that, and there has been a huge amount of work done. For example, the Partnership Board has done a huge amount of work, for example with the Yardmen Walk and lots of other things in terms of getting people from inner East Belfast just to make the walk into Titanic Quarter. The events that Belfast City Council organise and run around the Titanic Belfast and the work that Titanic Belfast itself does in terms of bringing people in for other reasons allows people to come onto the site for things that they're interested in and then feel perhaps more confident in future about coming back, whether it's to go to the Met or whether it's to go to a job interview. I think that's positive, and it's about trying to create opportunities for people to come on, experience what it's like to be on Titanic Quarter, get a feel for the place and feel that they're part of a community here.
I would be a very strong advocate of building tourist infrastructure in order to grow tourist numbers and increase tourist spend. That's why the signature project of the Tourist Board up at the Giant's Causeway, in terms of the city of Derry, Londonderry, and so on, is very important. You have to grow infrastructure in order to grow tourist numbers and spend. So I'd support that in this area. And I wouldn't diminish in any shape or form the big achievements. This has been one of the best examples of good public policy. But we now have a bit of an opportunity because of the slowdown in the property market to A, integrate this land back into the city, B, ensure that this doesn't become the new city centre with the likes of John Lewis coming here, and C, that the community becomes more part and parcel of these lands. There's a space for those things to be now taken forward. It is strategically whether people will have the will and the wherewithal, given the character of our government at the moment, to do any and all of that.
So how does your constituency view this place referred to as the Titanic Quarter. How do people on the ground in East Belfast regard this so-called jewel, the Titanic Quarter?
It's there. It's a place for tourists. It should have been a place for them and tourists.